the national staff level. And it is absolutely a day and night job of passion, and I love it. So I love getting to do these events and see you. And then I go back and we do stuff with our local Grange. And so Grange is kind of everywhere. And I think that if you're here, I would bet you have a similar story. Maybe your day job isn't Grange, but your night job kind of probably is. So I say that because I understand that I'm preaching to the choir. You guys probably wouldn't be sitting here if you didn't, one, love the Grange, two, think that it is important to continue, and three, know that you are screaming into the void. Or at least that's, I think, sometimes how we feel. Many of us end up putting in a lot of hours to try to make membership or communications or fill in the blank fundraising for your Grange work, and find that you're one of 3 or 4 or 5 who are doing the job, right? And yeah, I got a lot of head nods, and I bet you online. We're welcoming and joining anybody who's joining us there. They're probably nodding their head as well. So first thing I have to tell you is I'm super disappointed with the people sitting downstairs. Sorry, Gene, not disappointed with him. He's up here. Because on Sunday, right? Sunday, Monday, I've been here for way too many days. National Grange President Betsy Huber got to announce that we had a net gain in membership for the first time since 1955. Which is awesome. And that's the level of excitement we want, right? Even if your Grange didn't see growth over the past year, I guarantee you there's something in your community happening. Have you guys ever been around beehives, like right when the winter's starting to break? Okay, yeah. And all winter they've been in there just doing their little thing, keeping their bodies warm, all as a tiny little group like this. And something starts happening long about spring because they're not having to work as much to keep themselves warm. And there starts being movement. And just that little buzzing, that humming that you've been hearing as they've kept themselves warm all winter kind of stops. And there's just a little bit of quiet. And all of a sudden they're coming out from the hive and they're going and they're looking for all that they need in order to survive, right, for the spring. And I think that happened for us right as COVID was, I don't want to say disappearing or dissipating, but as we kind of changed statuses from this crisis zone and stay in your house to people who are starting to get out. Because when they were in their houses, they're obviously having to reevaluate what they're doing. I mean, how many of you kind of had an existential crisis in the midst of COVID? Okay. Yeah, I'm not alone, right? Okay. Or you spent more time with family and realized you loved it or hated it. Man, I need to find other friends so I can get away from these people. Or, you, because you're here, I'm sure this wasn't you, but you heard friends or people say, I felt like I was totally disconnected. I didn't have a group outside of maybe my work or whatever. COVID had us look at things very differently. And I'm going to call it the blessing in disguise for us, because while you struggled and you didn't have Paul rentals and you didn't have, potluck dinners and you didn't have all the things that you normally have that make you survive on a daily basis or a monthly basis, getting those bills paid, you all of a sudden were around a group of people who had been doing this for a long time, just living kind of in that mode where they were, caved in, cooped up, and needed to burst out and find something that worked for them. We got one more seat right here in the middle.
Someone left the cell phone here.
Oh, I'll keep it here until the end, and then we'll take down to the session and announce it. Okay, there's an available seat. Perfect. So what we saw out of COVID, at least on my end and when I'm talking to some of the state membership directors, state presidents and things like that, is the majority of people who are coming and looking for us are talking about our family values. And by that, I mean all the family together doing something. I'm not talking about, any red or blue things here. They're talking about an interest in knowing where their food comes from, because for a while we were a little nervous. I don't know how to make pasta. So when it flew off the shelves, I thought my life was over. But we like knowing where our food comes from. We like knowing that we have an abundant food source. And people started realizing that, food is grown here. Like, and there are people who do that. And then it has to like get put on trucks and transported to my like local supermarket. And it was a realization that I don't know anything about that process, but I do realize that I might not be able to feed myself if I don't understand a little bit more of it. And so we were in an amazing position because we do the two of our biggest elements are things that people were looking for. They were looking for a group that understands, cares, or likes food. And they were looking for a group that, allowed the whole family to come and do it together because they've either enjoyed spending time together or they realize I don't really like who my kids or my husband or my whatever is becoming because we're not doing things as a family. We're drifting away. We're not sharing the same values. So as we're hearing a lot of the anecdotes and stories, it's about wanting that togetherness, wanting the opportunity to be more connected with their neighbors, and wanting the opportunity to understand food. So where does that lead us from here? I'm a big proponent of knowing kind of where you came from to learn where you're going, both long-term and short-term. And what does the rest of our history teach us that people have now engaged with once they've come here and found us? Well, the one thing that I think we've heard a lot of folks say that they were not maybe surprised by, but they didn't really see it when they were originally saying, oh, I'd like to be a Grange member, was the civil discussions, the civil tone of our meetings. Because, boy, turn on any news station, right? And so historically, we've been that bridge builder, that moderator. And having that in our meetings has been a really important and key part of why people not just go, but they stay, in addition to those other things. So now I've given you 3 things that are kind of very important at this moment for people looking for or staying in Grange. Well, where do we go? First thing I really want to say is that obviously all Grange growth starts at the local level. Like, I'm super excited about that net gain, but that means I'm excited because 1,446 Granges in the country worked their butt off to show what we are and who we could be in the best light, and 425 of them had more people join than leave for whatever reason they leave, right? That's a pretty awesome number, and it means that there's a lot of folks out there who've gotten the same sense of what it means to meet these needs of our communities, and the needs of the people walking into the door. Oh, oh, you were already here. You're good. Okay, I'm like, oh my goodness, we're out of space. I'm gonna have to start putting people up here. I bite.
You have one so you can get
Okay, and we have 3 up here, so we're good. But there's maybe not quite enough of that knowledge out there of what's attracting people. So I think it's important for you guys to know what those 3 main things are in order to have some of your marketing dedicated in that way, and also to determine what your Grange, your Grange meetings, but your Grange experience outside of it can look like that will be probably the best received. Now, all of our communities are different. I should just put a little asterisk by this, right? Maybe your community just really wants to be there for the pool that you have. I don't know if there is one Grange that has a pool. They're in Tennessee, and they won it in the 1950s as the top prize for a community service project from Sears and Roebuck. Sears and Roebuck built them a community pool. So maybe your community's just there for that. But the likelihood is, your folks are coming and they're staying for these 3 reasons. So as you're envisioning your programming, as you're envisioning your marketing, as you're thinking about your fellowship activities and things that you're going to have, keeping in mind making them family friendly, which I think we do a really good job of. But maybe we're going to see one of the grandkids' plays, or the kids who are involved in your Grange or something like that as our fellowship outing, is a really nice way to get together and to really show that we are committed to this idea that we are a family. Having some of these things that we do, like the civil discussion as part of your marketing strategy, could be really important, but ensuring that you are actually having civil discussions in your Grange. And if you know that your Grange has a lot of rancor in it, going back and addressing that as one of our fundamental principles. And then the idea of, we're bridge builders, right? So finding ways to connect ourselves and our community, and go beyond the red and the blue, or whatever is dividing your community right now, whether it's, any of the social ills. Yes?
I can't get Bridge what?
Bridge builder.
Builder.
Yes. So I normally don't have to get much louder, but I can. I used to teach at a college and I would just get really loud until they'd listen to me. So if you need me to go up, you just kind of tell me. Okay, so that's all fine and good, but I think that what I really wanted to do in today's workshop was have a few moments to talk about some things that might be of importance for your Grange going forward. That sound like petty and procedural things, but they make this Grange experience a little bit smoother, better, or they tend to kind of meet what we typically tell people that we are as an organization, what they're joining. So how many of you have an elevator speech? Yeah, kind of. The Grange is a,
Oh, yeah.
right? Okay. So that's short pitch. You're telling somebody. And then when they say, can you tell me a little more? What are some of the things that you guys say, well, the Grange is?
I'd say the biggest difference between Grange and other organizations is that we focus on family and community, where other organizations hyper-focus on youth or adult.
Okay.
And there's no crossover, and with everybody's schedule being as busy and packed as it is, or inflation and gas prices being what they are, people are looking for a way to spend more time together and do more things together, and we can facilitate that.
Okay.
So we offer all of our shows that we do during the year.
I'm going to hold that because that doesn't happen in most other states, and I know they're going to get a lot of that down there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So going back to the elevator speech, so as a longtime Grange member, do you start with the we're a fraternal organization and scare them off with those words? Or do you kind of move into, well, we're a community service-based organization, grassroots? What's the best way to start that speech?
It kind of depends on who you're talking to. Some people don't get scared off by the word fraternal organization. Michael Tobin, who's back there in the room, got a shout out yesterday. He's going to get a shout out again. He's an e-member. He's looking to start an actual Grange chapter in the Baltimore region. And he came and said, yeah, fraternal sounds fine. I understand what those do. So it wasn't as super scary. But there have been people that I've talked to that certainly are like, ooh.
Yeah.
So you say that word, right?
Or the word ritual is another
right.
thing is scary.
Yeah, so knowing kind of your audience is obviously important, but I think it is important to say that we are a fraternity. And we focus on fellowship. And I think, fraternity sometimes is like, well, can I be a part of it? I'm a woman. I certainly can't be a part of a fraternity. Or fraternity, oh man, like it's just a booze fest. Because unfortunately in a lot of our college towns, that's the way that we think about that word. And so for me, whenever I say the word, like we're a fraternal organization, we are a family that focuses on fellowship. I think that that's very fair when I'm representing like our local Grange. I point to Beth because she's one of our members, and it's super cool to be able to do this week with her. But I think if you can contextualize it, you're good. I do love focusing on that because again, right now we're seeing that people want others in their lives. They want to build the sense of family and they want to be able to bring their family into it. So we're a family fraternity. We focus on fellowship, and you're going to go right to, some of the programming that you guys do. A lot of us are still vague enough that we're like community service. Not sure what that is, but we do it, Some of us don't really know what our focus is after that. And I think that that's certainly something that, and again, I'm preaching to the choir. You all know what your focus is. It's the Grange down the road that's been struggling for a while, right? Yeah.
So one of the things I try and hit on is my catchphrase, not what Grange can do for you, but what you could do with a Grange. And so if you have a community project or something that you're focused on, you can come into the Grange and we have the abilities to move that
Push it forward.
That's a good way of looking at it. I mean,
It's
because
really, come in, what are you passionate about?
Yeah.
Right.
Because with the Grange, we can facilitate that.
it's a good way of looking at it. You had me scared. I almost had a heart attack for a second because I thought you were going to do the John F. Kennedy. And if the last part of that is what you can do for the Grange as a membership pitch, I was going to be like that. So I was so glad that you
That's what you
deviated
can do with the Grange.
with the Grange, right?
Because we have a fellowship here and we got your back. We want to work with you on something you're passionate about.
And I think that that's a really great way of looking at it. I think one caution, and I have this for every Grange, is you can do 100 different things in your community, but at some point there's something that you're measuring everything that's brought to you against. We talk sometimes about mission statements, ideas, values, whatever it is. So locally, and again, I'm using me as an example because I know me, but you all can plop your thing in here. We've really gone the sustainability as far as the community sustainability and resilience. And what does that mean? Well, does that mean that I can't go raise money for the dog shelter? Absolutely not. You know, does that mean I can't go do a fundraiser or help at a project at our community arts center? No, because those are resources that we need to make our community a place we want to live. And so it's constantly investing in the community. So the question for us, I think whenever we come up with something, whether it's a project or whether we want to have a partnership with somebody or whatever, is how does this positively portray or impact our community? And as long as I can kind of measure it up to that, and somewhere in like our dialogue when we're talking to people, we're building a stronger community. And we do it by meeting the needs or interests of the members we have. We bring our resources to bear. We've got, 6 members, and many of them can be called upon to help with certain projects, right? I mean, that's all we can measure ourselves against. I worry when we don't have anything to measure ourselves against, because then it's like, well, who are you and what are you doing? You guys have you have a lot of varied things, but you have a focus, and that's one thing that has helped, especially in Nevada, some of the Washington, California areas where they're getting a lot of growth in the youth fair program. But when there's a lot of other states in here who don't do that, it's trying to figure out what that focus is. And it doesn't have to be exclusionary. Theirs isn't. They do all kinds of things that matter in that community. The other thing I wanted to think about is the things that we do every day versus the things that we used to do. How many of you get into the trap of we used to when I was a young Granger?
Yeah.
And there's no way to exercise that from our language. I have been a Grange member since 2010. I started working at the National Grange in 2011. And I realized the other day that I am 40 now, and I am going to be doing when I first started. Because I've definitely done that this week. It's human nature. We compare. But oftentimes part of what we're doing is we're saying, well, we used to have this amazing youth camp. And I'm like, cool. When can I go? We don't have that anymore. And there's a lot of that happens. And what you're doing though is you're taking that we used to have and oftentimes turning them into part of the pitch. Like the Grange does amazing leadership development training. Okay, let's get real for a second. How many of your folks, young professionals, kids, whatever, are you sending to regional conferences, to state Grange session, to Pomona events, and explaining to them that they can learn something out of those events? Funding it, sending them, right? But you guys have a different kind of leadership program, at your local level. How many of you know that young people are getting mentored in your Grange? Ooh, okay, Connie's like the only one. She's like, Crow Grange got this. No, never mind. Don't have this. Okay.
Trying.
How many of you know that you are, for example, whether it's you personally in that Grange or whether it's a group of you, are working with some of the younger folks in your Grange, whether that's like young professional. God, I'm not young anymore. Stop pointing yourself at me. Or your teenagers, and you're helping them with a resume, or you're saying, hey, I'm happy. Oh, you're going out for an interview for the Air Force Academy. All right, I have no idea what they're going to ask you in that interview, but I'll slap some questions at you, and you can just see how you perform. Wherever they are in life, how many of you know that that's happening, where we're being actually part of the family and the fellowship? Yeah, okay. So that's not happening in all but 2 Granges here, 3 Granges maybe here, right? And those are easy ways to meet that thing that you used as the hook to get these folks to join, that if they don't see, You've just given them a false promise. You kind of, false advertising is bad. Don't do it. That doesn't cost any money. Sending them to state session or the regional conferences does, and I understand we're all kind of short on that sometimes. But if we're going to tell somebody something, and I use leadership development because I think that's the easiest one for me to pull as a really good example, because I hear oftentimes, well, we used to have them go through the chairs. We used to have a quarterly where there was a youth night that they did the opening in our local Grange. And we used to have, and we at our camp we did, and camp hasn't existed for 30 years. So it's a way to adapt some of those things that you realize were so important and fundamental. And the people around you who are maybe a little older than you who are telling you were fundamental that kept them part of the Grange, they're still relevant today. It might be done a little bit differently, but they're still very, very relevant. They're the things that were the most meaningful. And there's ways to adapt them, even if your Grange has $12 to its name and doesn't have a hall anymore, for example, or is amazing and wonderful and can send people all over the place. But making sure that whatever those pitch lines are, you're matching them as soon as they come in. Because our biggest thing that we have a problem with is retention. It's not recruitment. That's the joke that I have figured out over the last couple of years is we can get people. I mean, Jim can talk to a friend, and while he's not going to get every friend, there's going to be one who's like, hey, you're cute, I'll go with you. Yeah, come on. There's lots of reasons why people will join. Some of them are because they like agriculture. Some are because they like you. And hey, use it for you, okay? Anyway, but they won't stay sometimes, and it's because what we've told them they're going to see and do is not the thing that they're experiencing. So this year, as I'm moving forward, there's tons of resources we already have. I have to say, I'm super fortunate. Leadership, membership, development position has been in place since the 90s in the national Grange. Harry Massey, who not too long ago passed away, you might remember as Mr. Fantastic, right? Because that's his response to almost everything. Obviously, had a really good rapport with people, and he had a lot of information that he put together. The gentleman from New York, Roger Halbert, who was more data driven, and he sent out surveys and he tried to learn what was happening in Granges. If your Grange is meeting at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, you're probably not long for this world. If you're meeting at 5 p.m. on a Friday in a really heavy football community, you're missing a whole bunch of opportunities. Like, he was able to identify some of these things by the trends that he saw in those reports. So we have some of that stuff. Then I think there was somebody in between. And then there was Ed Luttrell, who was obviously later promoted to national president. He knew some things. There was Michael Martin, who came over from 4-H, and he had been doing a lot of stuff at that program. And he is a generational Granger who had, in Massachusetts, they go up the chairs, who had been part of that system before he moved. So he's a kind of somebody that we saw as a national board leader. We had Joe Stefanoni, who's now president in California, and then me, and then Joe, and now me again. But there were some amazing resources left from those departments. Some of them that didn't fit their time. Some of them that are a little outdated in the approach, but they're not wrong, right? In their base. I am really fortunate because I walked into a department that we have a lot of resources, oftentimes that you guys don't know we have. So I don't have to rebuild the wheel this year or last year. I just had to get my own system in place. But we're able now to start moving forward and talking about things like retention instead of recruitment, and leadership instead of, go out and find everybody. And the other thing that we're able to do, and I've been saying this for a couple of years, but I hope the numbers now give you the faith to do it, is we don't need everybody. We are a fraternal organization with an application process. We have certain expectations, or we should, of our members about who they are and what they are and where they fit here. And if there is someone who's just not going to fit that for you, understand that even if your Grange loses a member or two or doesn't have a net gain out of it, you're more likely to have a gain at some point if you don't have a really cantankerous person or a really terrible cultural climate. And if there's somebody who you're like, they'd be a good Granger, but not with us, okay, call me. We'll figure out how to start a new Grange for them. okay? And because there are some people who are really great, but they're, my best friend's ex-husband, and I'm gonna punch that dude in the face, right? So he's not joining our Grange, but he might be a terribly good Granger. He was a Granger before, okay? And so we can start a Grange for him. It's just not gonna be mine. Now, that's not great to say because we know we really want to have differing opinions and whatever, but there are certain things you can't overcome. It's just unfortunately the way life is. And so, we can figure out if you say this person doesn't work for us, but they work. And I would so much rather hear that than we took somebody in and we all hated them to begin with. And now half the members have dropped and we are in a bad position. We had a gain. You all have people who are looking to walk into your halls. I promise you, you can turn a rock and find them. You don't need everyone. We need to have a set of standards that we hold people to. So, I encourage you, unfortunately, to be a little bit not discriminating in color, not just discriminating sex, not discriminating in everything like that, but do they fit? Go ahead.
So I have a story about that. My name is Jill. I'm from Southern Oregon, Grange, Gas. I represent 2 Granges, and we rechartered Redwood Grange last September.
Mm-hmm.
And when I put it out on social media, I convinced the Oregon State Grange to let me have that because that was my very first Grange in 1980 that I joined. And so it's like, nope, you cannot close it. We're going to rebuild it.
Mhm.
And so they allowed me to do that. So I put on social media, hey, we're going to recharter this Grange. We're looking for members. The community needs it. And our local Republican Party decided to send out an email to all of their group and stuff and say, this is our opportunity to take over this Grange, to move in here.
It was so sweet of them to know how much power the word Grange has.
I know. That's what I said.
So that's the plus I'm going to give out of this entire story because I feel this going downhill very quickly.
It is. So it
Not
was,
because
I'm
they were
like,
Republicans.
join, go ahead, show up, and so we had over 60 people come to the initial meeting, which Susan Noah at the
Mhm.
time was our state pastor, and the executive board came down to do the introduction and to charter it and everything. And I told her, because I was accidentally sent that email so I could have a heads up of what was going on. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. So I told Susan what was going on. I says, these people think that they're gonna come in here and make this into a Republican headquarters. I need you to make sure that they understand exactly what this Grange is. She's like, I got this.
And this
So-
is why Susan and I are friends.
I know. So a lot of them actually did sign up thinking, oh, well, we can still kind of, maneuver things once that group is gone. We've got this. Anyhow, I think they came to, we've been open now functioning for a year, well over a year, obviously. And some of them have come to 1 or 2 meetings. That we've never seen a good portion of them. But what has happened is because it is such an awesome Grange in the direction that we're going, we are, through the members that are active there, we are replacing them very quickly this next month with people who appreciate what that organization really means. And I know we'll lose some, but we're going to be gaining some
It's okay.
quality members.
We have to understand the door works both ways.
It does, and I'm not sad about it at
So,
all.
yeah, and the other thing is you have to know what the bylaws say and what your bylaws say. We have to know what the bylaws say, right? You can say as a Grange that this person doesn't fit. We did this recently and it was a thing to say that because we just chartered 18 months ago, same like you. And we're in the building phase, right? Like everybody should be a member. We love this. Except there was a lot of issues with this specific person that I'm not saying they're a bad person, but there's stuff going on that's very public. And we just went, how much does this attach us to any of that? And in that, it was, you can't discuss, right? There is an application, but there's not a discussion in your Grange meeting. Now I can discuss with Beth outside and say, I'm uncomfortable with this, right? But during the Grange meeting, when you take an application, you don't debate or discuss, it's voted on. So we had to know that. We also, with a Grange with 50 some people now, only like 3 of which had Grange experience, had to do a quick, this is the base of what happens here. If we say no to a person, how many votes does that take? If we say no to a person, can we tell other people that we did? I mean, I'm kind of telling you like this view, because this is about the only view you can get. We declined a membership application period, right? I can't really give you any more details, because if you come into my town, you would basically really quickly be able to figure out who it was. If I told you, well, there were issues, and then I go any further than that. So we had to remind our members that you vote your conscience, you vote if you think that this person is going to be a benefit to us, and that could be that they do have a reputation, so that would be good. So where does that reputation take us? You vote if you think that they're going to be a good fit for your members. You know, my best friend's ex-husband is not a good fit for our membership, because that's going to cause all kinds of internal stuff. He might be a perfectly fine person, but not for maybe a couple of us to hang around. And that's going to dissuade us from going to certain pieces of the fellowship and whatever. You know, it's just going to cause some things. You get to say this is a fit or not fit. But once somebody has been elected into membership, give an exception, you've got them. You're stuck with them. You don't just get to say, Jim, I hate that shirt. I hate what you said at the last meeting. Get out, right? He's like, I'm actually ready for a nap, so you can tell me. You don't get to just vote someone out really easily, right? And actually, in most cases, you have to go through a whole process of charges, which is almost legalistic. I mean, if you ever thought that being a lawyer would be a good idea, you're the one who needs to be writing Grange charges if there's a problem, because it is a process that looks like something that is, and it is extremely complicated. And there are a whole set of bylaws just about how to get rid of someone. So making sure that's a someone that you want to begin with is an important piece. And I don't know about you, but there are some times where I'm like, man, I wish I had gone to Harvard. I loved my college, man. I had a great college experience, but why did I want to go to Harvard? Because it has a reputation of being exclusive. And as soon as I'd go up to you and I'd say, so I graduated from Harvard. Like Sean is going to, Sean who was just here, who was accepted into Harvard, right? It has a reputation of exclusivity. I actually don't know anything about their program. I'm not sure if they have a communications department. But if you tell me you graduated with a communications degree from Harvard, you're it, right? Grange needs to embrace the fact that we can be that too in our communities. Everybody can go do the food bank, and everybody can go do this and that. But we are a fraternal organization. We have some fences and some boundaries. And we expect you to do certain things and play the game in a certain way. So, you know, reading over some of that foundational documents that we've got about fellowship and about, you know, the idea of civil discussion. One of my favorite things when we did the heirloom program this year, which is continuing, please continue it. If you haven't seen it, go down to the showcase, was one of the quotes that was, a difference of opinion is no crime. Anybody know where that comes from? Who said yes? No?
From the Grange manual from one of the ceremonies and things.
Close? No. It's from our Declaration of Purposes. Yeah. Declaration of Purposes that has only been modified like twice. And that's original language from the 1870s from our founders. Difference of opinion is no crime. You know, how cool. But we have to know that those people will agree with that, you know, that we can disagree and fight about it and then go have potluck together. And so, you know, when you are looking at a new member, you're holding them to a standard because you don't want to have all the internal turmoil. You don't want to have to go through that whole process, but more because it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, you know, I don't know that you're a good fit here, but local pet shelter is looking for a volunteer who has your skill set. You know, look, I'll volunteer at the local pet shelter over dealing with most people most days. I like Rangers. I don't like most people. They kind of stink. So, you know, you could be a resource. You can say, hey, we actually have a partnership with the food bank. And, you know, you work in finances. Like, they really need a person who will help, you know, with treasurer or whatever. You're just not a good fit for us. And I think that's a very fair thing to know that you are who you want to be as an organization. You're moving forward in a certain way. You're not excluding people just because of like personal opinion. You know, difference of opinion is no crime, but that otherwise you're making sure somebody's up to the standard that you want. It is okay for us going forward to say not everybody is a Grange member, and mean it. So 5 minutes, I figured because somebody showed up in the middle of my workshop. I come up here. No, you don't get to come in early and then not be part of this.
Right.
Good morning, everyone.
I'm going to introduce him, who's going to introduce himself in a few minutes, but
I'm not leaving the workshop.
we work really well together, I hope. This is Phil Beneda. He's our communications director. So remember I told you I was like doing one of these for a while. So he's it. I'm not doing anything. I'm not going back. I'm sorry. He's too good.
I wouldn't let her anyway.
Yeah, no, he's too good. We get along very well. I think that there's a couple of things that are obviously crossed up in both of our departments that we are looking forward to working on over the next year. I really, really encourage you, if you can, to get onto the Membership Matters Zooms. Phil's talking about doing communications
We will
Zoom.
start, communication department Zoom tutorials will be every other month starting in January. So if there are topics that you want to learn about, please let me know. Our first one will be on utilizing Canva as a resource. Or as we like to call it, Photoshop for Dummies.
Mhm.
So everyone can do it.
So much better than anything else out there, I swear. But there's a lot of things that I think resource-wise come from both departments, and I'm hoping that if you're sitting here thinking about membership, you're not thinking solely about membership, because you are now the membership, marketing, leadership, mentoring, appreciation, retention officer for your Grange. Those are the things that you're kind of taking on because they're all pieces of this membership puzzle. You're working with hopefully your lecturer, because that's the only job that I was going to list but didn't, that's actually elected for somebody else besides you to do, unless you're the lecturer, in which case, congratulations, you have you have more titles than us at that point, which is
Not
kind of
me.
surprising. Kind of surprising, yeah. I'm just, it's all membership now. Anyway, so, I hope that you're taking advantage of some of the other resources that are put out by National Grange. And I hope that you're taking from this, one, we're very approachable. I think you know that. But two, we've talked a lot about what people are interested in, where we kind of fit in this new narrative of people's social lives, but also that, not everybody needs to be here. And I am probably the worst membership director in history, but I very often say, it's better to be small and powerful and have people flock to you than it is to be really loud and nobody wants to be around you. Although I think we're really loud. So.
And they're still here.
Yeah, look at that.
For people who don't know, you're saying that all of us contact us. What is,
Yeah.
how do they get a hold of you?
I love text messages. I'm not gonna lie. I almost love them more than email. I hate voicemails.
And she answers them
Who
at
calls
2 o'clock in
anymore?
the morning, too.
But I do. Yeah, I do. So I live on the East Coast, but West Coast, Best Coast this week because you guys all had growth in your Granges. So congratulations. Emails are great because obviously I can check them whenever, and if it's more detailed, please send me an email. It's membership@nationalgrange.org. His is communications@nationalgrange.org. I say that because I was communications@nationalgrange.org, and if you have that saved as my
That was me.
contact, he's gonna get it. So don't be like, yo, that Phil dude, what was up with him?
And I will respond when somebody's like, hey, Amanda, will you do this for me? I said, well, I'm Phil now.
And so some people in the Grange think I've transitioned, but I promise. It's not that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm membership at National Grange. He is communications at National Grange. We both are really available. One of the reasons that we really get along is these jobs are not 9 to 5. There is nothing 9 to 5 about it. You probably work 9 to 5, so you need me from 6 to 8. Please don't do it on the second and fourth Thursday of the month because I'm in my local Grange meeting. But outside of that, no, I love text messages if I can answer them quickly. So if it's something like, hey, do you know where I can find the bylaws? I'm probably shooting you back immediately, a link to where it is on the website. Or something where you're saying, hey, I'd like to talk to you at some point and we can set up that. Let's do that by text if you can. My number's on my business cards, which I forgot to bring in here because our schedule was all kinds of a whack
Sure
this morning. So my number is 301 943-1090. I give it out to everybody. If you call me in the middle of the night, it's possible that I answer. If you call me drunk from a hotel in the middle of the night, you will not live it down. I will tell your mother. Talk to Kathy Baldwin. She'll let you know. 301-943-1090.
And you are on the national website.
I am. Yeah, you can find all of your staff in the national website. But we are really available, I think, to you. And if you have a question that you think is weird, it's not. If you have a complaint or concern because, something is weird in your Grange, I have heard it before and worse.
Please address it to Betsy.
I typically end up being the in-between for that, which means that you may have either hit me on a day where I've just heard that we got 2 new charters and there's things going great, or you hit me on a day where there's somebody who, did something absolutely egregiously awful. And I'm in a mood. But I always am excited to hear from you guys. So please don't hesitate. And please don't hesitate to come to any of our workshops. Send out your other people. We are here to help you. And you will find that we have a ton of ideas, and we especially can make sure to tailor them to you if we can talk with you. So don't hesitate. Thank you guys so much. I'm here all week. 2 shows on Friday.
Just one